My guests today, the authors of The Making of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Yes, John and Maria Jose Tenuto. In just a second. Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live, number 327. With me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemechek. Yes, coming right at you here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 and Trekland Treks, bringing you some sanity, some clarity, and a bigger picture in all things Star Trek. And I am so glad you can join us again for another Tuesday. Hey, if you're new to Trekland Tuesdays Live, you want to jump in, you want to introduce yourself in the chat. We've got a wonderful chat. We're global. All you veterans can tell you we're on apparently even more continents now. We had our first African viewers a couple of weeks ago. This is awesome. Everybody's chiming in now. So if you're new to joining us today, if you heard about the Tenutos coming on, that's awesome. Join us. Check in. Now, what's going to happen is normally in a normal show, I would go on my soapbox for a few minutes, then circle back and look at the chat. So when we have guests, we abridge that a little bit. I'm going to jump in pretty quick here with John and Maria Jose. We are going to take chat questions as we go along, or at least after we get started. So a little bit of a change up today in the guest mode. Otherwise, please let everybody know until then where you're from, what's the weather like, how are things going, how's your trek been, how's your week been. It's been a stressful week in the world at large, but we are here right now. Let's find a little clarity, sanity in the big picture in Star Trek. I just want to remind everybody that as we head into fall, it's a perfect time here in Southern California. If you've thought about this, maybe you want to give it as a gift. I don't know. Coming into the spring even, you can plan it. It's a perfect time to take a Trekland trek with me, your own customized away mission. These are so much fun. And yes, you should go up and visit the sets up in Ticonderoga, Star Trek Set Tours. What we're talking about are the location sites. There's over 50. Thank you, Picard Season 1 and 2 and 3. There's now over 50 places around Southern California. Big ones, little ones, I'll help you work out for. We will customize your own away mission, handle your cosplay, your props, your stuffed animals, your pets, whatever's with you. We'll go to Floral, have a lunch, 6 hours with me, door-to-door service from your hotel. It's an awesome day, and it's really memorable. And I think it's like nothing else you can get in Trek fandom and experience. So check that out. It's at my site at larrynimachek.com. You can go to treklandtreks.com and check that out too. Otherwise, welcome again to another Tuesday of Trekland Tuesdays Live. I don't want to keep talking. I want to get right to it. Now, I know, well, let's bring them in first, all right? Here they are. Boom. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Welcome. Yes, that's the side I want to be on, so I'm not interrupting your face with my logo. This is so awesome. Now, we'll have folks asking questions in the chat, but I want to talk to you just directly for a few minutes. You two, here's what we first met back in the communicator days. Correct me if I'm wrong. When you all submitted for our fan spotlight, and I was like, whoa, you were both teachers, professors, college professors, and doing awesome jobs. Award-winning, folks. I should say the award-winning Tenutos here.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about. I mean, are you full? You've retired, not teaching full time. What's going on with you guys?
Yeah, I just retired about 8 weeks ago after almost 30 years teaching, and that's been an experience. Maria Jose is still teaching for a few more years. Okay. Yeah, so she's still doing it, but yeah, it's been quite an adventure for us. So I my great affection I have for the Star Trek communicator. And how it was, I always call it the internet before there was the internet for us, right? That was one of our most important lifelines. And that was the thrill. That was such a thrill. That was 20, that had to be 20 years ago at least.
You guys aren't math professors, right? So
no. I think Nemesis was out.
Nikki was a baby.
Nikki was a baby. So it was 20. Yeah, it would be 21 years ago, something like that.
Remind everybody what you teach, what you teach.
Well, we both teach sociology, and I also have a degree. I don't know why, but I have a degree in the humanities. Not sure why.
Oh, the humanities. Okay.
And that's so I could say that. Oh, the humanities, or the humanities, as a Ferengi would say. But so I do occasionally some film classes, and we do sociology of Star Trek, sociology of Star Wars, finding ways to get either get sociology to fans who are fans of science fiction, or sometimes people are fans of sociology and they wind up coming and learning about Star Trek and how it deals with, I mean, the singular best, I think, example of, in the television world for sure, in the movie world, of using social issues to tell stories. Star Wars was always a little harder to do that with. Because Star Wars is a little more about mythological, religious. I mean, there's certainly social things for sure in Star Wars, but Star Trek is right on point with that. So that was always a fun class to do.
Well, you're in that great community of teachers, public school teachers, lesser college professors, the whole education realm that find ways to use Star Trek, whether it's sciences or the social sciences, psychology, government, civics, all of that. So the thing that always kills me about you, so you're in the greater Chicago area?
Yes, we're about 40 miles north of Chicago.
Okay. But the bottom line here is what I've always envied about you guys is you're not far from University of Iowa. I mean, you're like a state away. Yes. And you could go over, and I have envied you all for so many years because you were able to go over and check into Nick Meyer's papers. And that's been an ongoing, I mean, you've done a lot of articles at StarTrek.com. You did some pieces for us in the Communicator and probably other places too. But you've done incremental pieces through his papers. And let's get it up here. The book, the Star Trek II Wrath of Khan, really nice coffee table book. And I'm gonna asterisk my use of the term coffee table book, because to me, coffee tables books are all glossy pictures and more photos, less text, which are useful and brilliant. But you guys calling this a coffee table book does it a disservice in my old classic definition, because there's a lot of writing and a lot of interviewing, and I want to get into that. But talk about all these, how you got into going over and rating, archiving through Nick's papers that he gave to his alma mater.
Well, it's funny. We had learned that was also about 20 years ago. We had learned that there was this archive there, and we were able to go into it and look, and we said, well, gosh, there's, we were talking about contact sheets before the show started, and there were so many contact sheets, and there were so many images that we had never seen before in there, and also
little itty bitty,
especially the Khan baby.
And for digital generation folks, the contact sheet was when you had analog film going through a camera, still or movie film, but stills. Photographers, you'd get your negatives back and cut them up, and of course, a negative had to be printed as a positive in color or black and white before there was color. But you got the negative strips, and just to be able to handle the negatives and see what you had, they would print them. But rather than blowing them up to a big picture, you would save time, money, and paper, and just lay the strips out on an 8x10. And so you wound up with a sheet that, if I thought I would have grabbed one, and that was a contact sheet. And that way you could take a loop and scan. They were small images, but they were the negatives, right? So you had, and they would print them as positives, so you could at least look at things. If there were 10 shots of any one moment, a photo editor could go along with a loop and look and pick out the best one rather than having to print everything to get the best photo. So anyway.
Yeah. And there were so many good ones. So we said, gosh, this is like a sin. These are sitting here and everyone should see these. So we emailed Nick Meyer, never talked to him before in our lives, and told him who we were. And that our mission at that time was to just spread these photos for free to everyone who we could spread them to, through library talks, through convention appearances, and so on. And he said, sure, go ahead. He gave us permission to digitize what was there. And that just started a multi, many year research into that, into Space Seed. So then we expanded that and went into Gene Roddenberry's archives, started to do interviews with people like DC Fontana and Joe Augusta, who were involved with the original show, to find out about Space Seed and all of that. So really just a labor of love, because of course we love the movie.
Yeah. I'm sitting here. I got to finally flick through, and I think I read about a chunk of this, a third of it, at least just yesterday when I got back from a big weekend trip. I finally, thank you for helping me get review copies since things had changed over. Anyway, there's just so many. There's a couple places where they actually use the conceit of it, everything being on a contact sheet. That's what I was looking for. But there are now this is an interesting conversation. Maybe we can get into this. But there are tons of photos, and a lot of them are black and white, and people go, oh, they're not in color. Well, behind the scenes, and in the 80s, they were still shooting black and white because they're thinking there's going to be more newspapers and magazines. Color is more expensive to print than black and white. And, you know, in the old days, they would shoot slides, but they'd also have black and white. And sometimes the lighting conditions on a set, they were just easier to capture something black and white than in color. Yeah. But there are so many photos. And there's a couple of situations where I said, oh, you don't have the so-and-so picture, which we get into the issue about photo archives, because it's been 40 years, 40 plus years now.
And another thing about the photos is that the material is so scattered. And that was one of our challenges, because things were in different places. So you have the Nicholas Meyer collection in the University of Iowa. Gene Roddenberry's is at UCLA. Costume designer Robert Fletcher, his material is at Harvard. So things are all different places. So having to coordinate that. And we were also writing during COVID. So it was difficult to, there was a long time that you have to wait, you know, contacting people, getting permissions, getting access.
Excuse me.
God bless you. Everything just took longer at that time.
Well, did you get to travel? You get to travel in person to Harvard and to UCLA, right?
Well, Harvard Titan arranged for us to get the permissions and to get the items because of COVID at that time. But we were able to go to some of the other archives, and luckily we had almost all of Nick Meyer's collection already digitized with his permission. So we didn't have to go back to the University of Iowa except to get their permission, to get permissional type of things from them. But we actually had to even speak with fans. The scripts were scattered. So we had to reach out to the fan community and some of the great fans that we know and ask them who has this copy, who has this version, who has Samuel Peoples, who has this version, just because even that has been scattered, through time, either into people's library collections, or they've just been, they weren't kept, they were auctioned off or lost in the archives. And so that was great. The most fun though was getting the photos directly from ILM. So almost all the special effects imagery in the book is from ILM. So they of course have their own archives and their own library, and those were so great because so many of those we had never seen before, because those were private to ILM at the end until they gave permission for the book. Right.
The cool thing about like visual effects, especially, but also makeup artists, sometimes set people, if it's like as we saw with Picard, Dave Blass, Liz Koslowski, everybody takes their, because they're proud of the work, and especially if they're a fan, they're tipped off that people are going to want this 50 years from now, and this is going to it's here and then gone. These sets are here and gone. These moments, costumes are here. Shooting these models, or even sitting down and doing something digitally, it's a moment that's almost not recreatable. So thank goodness there's a far better sense of archiving. And on a movies were always better, documented than episodes blurred by, unless it was the pilot or the finale or the big thing everybody knew, the sweeps month show that you knew about in advance, like Tribulations or something. You could do that. But movies started off at a better pace, and there's a lot it's been heartening to see so much that's in here. So how did the book actually, so you've been writing along, interpreting things from Nick's papers over the years, writing little one-off articles, I should say little, doing some major archive preserving. Did you have this as a goal in the end, or did it just kind of naturally evolve to doing the book? And I've taken the jacket off just because I'm flipping pages. I don't want to mess up the top.
We used to give, we were giving presentations at libraries and conventions, and people would ask us or say to us, you should write a book. And then
one day, right when COVID started, and we got an email from Titan, publisher there, and an editor there, and said, "Do you think that there are enough? John Van Sitters had recommended you just in terms of, do you think there's enough photos to do a book? Do you know who would be good to do the book?" And we were a little, we didn't necessarily say we would do it right away because I didn't want to take that leap. But I thought, sure, there's lots of pictures to do. The original conception actually was an art book, so similar to the Star Trek the Motion Picture art book. And really, there aren't as many art images for Wrath of Khan, just because of the development phase wasn't as long. There wasn't sort of the time for that. Of course, there's the great Mike Miner and Robert Sallin created the sort of blueprint photographs, blueprint images that they have, and they have those type of things, set design images and things like that. But there wasn't as much sort of pre-production paintings or imaginings like you would have in today's world. And so we thought, well, we'd be better as a making of book. And then they said, well, why don't you do it? And we said, yeah, of course. Because this, I was a kid on June 4th, 1982, sitting at the Esquire Theater with my dad, seeing Wrath of Khan. And if you told me that my wife and I would one day, well, if you told me I had a wife, that alone would shock the hell out of me, that someone would take pity on me. But I mean, that was the thrill of our life to be able to do this book, because we have the affection we have is not just for the actors, although we have a particular soft spot for Ricardo Montalban, but also the behind the scenes people. We felt like we knew them. We felt, even though we had never met a lot of them and many of them had passed away, we felt like we knew them through their work, and we loved them so much. And that we wanted to do the book for that reason.
Well, go ahead, Mary Jo.
I was going to say, we think it's a crime when you're watching a movie and at the end they go like fast forward through the commercials, or they bring advertising in, and so everything gets shifted over to the side and it's microscopic font and you can't read it, or they have the option to skip the credits, and so then
the streaming channels just jump down there and you want to see credits and you're fumbling around on a streaming channel to not have it default to the next episode. And it takes you 3 times to finally just watch the credits the way you wanted to watch, I wish there was no, you're absolutely, but hey, you're preaching to the choir here,
Yeah, that happens to us all the time, because there's also good music that goes along with those credits, and you want to hear that music as well. So we wanted to celebrate these behind the scenes artists who made this such a classic film. And we want people to, when they do see the credits, those credits come alive. They know who those names are.
Well, a lot of that is from, by the way, Larry, from you and Dan, from that focus in the Communicator days on the behind the scenes fan. I mean, I was in this Al Smutko fan club, right? So every time Al Smutko's name came on, you clapped. That was the Al Smutko fan club. There's nothing else to it, but I mean,
actually, did you know this? Actually, that's such a thing that he's in LA, right? I think I have to go search this out. We should do something with this sometime. But in the day after Next Generation had been on for a year or two, because his name was at the top of a panel of names and it stuck out. I had a friend that every week we were watching together, and she'd go, Al Smutko. But there were some fans, and I want to say Wisconsin or Michigan, that wrote him and said, we'd like to start the Al Smutko fan club. And he was like, they were like tickled, like, okay. And they made buttons, and I have one somewhere. It was like purple with red on it. And it was just the Al Smutko fan club. And he and his family just thought that was a hoot. So you were not alone.
I mean, it was just great. And then, that is great. No, that's great. That's great.
No, I was going to say, you're preaching to the choir when you talk about behind the scenes folks. And there's 2 things going on here. Number one, that happens. And I want to say it's only been the last 10 years or so, partly because of the internet and partly because of everybody and their dog having a podcast or YouTube show. And that's cool. And if they were attached to a done show, that's one thing. The current shows, sometimes there's a security lid on for spoilers, and it's hard to get things out at the time. But even the studio is doing so much more documenting just for the TV episodes week to week than they ever did before, which is great. Because I too, when I worked on Fact Files, when I did the companion for Next Gen, you'd go in there and you couldn't believe how little material there was in the archives and all that, and you had to go track down people to do that. But then you got to meet all those folks and realize how many of their stories and the what ifs and all the whys. So I was thrilled when, first of all, like I said, I'm here, I got the cover. Here's the cover. I took it off so I wouldn't mess it up. That this is not just, as you said, they wanted a photo book, and well, let me start there. They said, let's do a photo book. Are there enough photos? Was it a push to say, let's actually have some text and interviewing in with this as well?
No, they were really great about that. We were able to sneak in the original amount of words plus. So they were willing to go. We were very happy with Titan on that decision, because it was like
3,000 to 5,000 more.
We were able to sneak in, which is significant, to sneak in to 5,000 more words. Than we had intended. And a lot of that goes to the beautiful design that they did allowed you to showcase the pictures, but also put in a lot of text. Mm-hmm. And so, we were very happy with that support, because there's like, I think there's there's the contact sheets.
Yes. That's how
of course, now I find them.
Yes.
Well, I thought you had somewhere they were actually with the black border and
with the black border. I think that's that is in there.
Oh no, but here's a whole series. This is Genesis Cave, and you can. It's just they're rehearsing, or the still photographers just doing it. But see, there's lots of good. There's lots of words here to go along with the pictures.
Yeah, we wanted to tell. We really wanted to tell the whole story of the making of. There were a few parts that we had to make shorter than we wanted to. In particular, James Horner, we wanted to showcase more, but we really couldn't, partially because, then this is, it goes to what you were saying about the photography and so on. We've never been able to find a picture of him composing Star Trek II. In other words, actually conducting. There is a photo, very low quality, not good enough to reproduce in the book, of Nick Meyer and Robert Sallin and James Horner and a couple others sort of around looking at the score, like pretending to read it, And so because of that, we were able to get a picture of James Horner in there in his cameo that was in the movie. He's in the film. But so he wound up getting a little shortchanged, and that's something we regret, just because it couldn't be 400 pages, right? So, and then we figured, Jeff Bond had done. That's a.
We wouldn't mind it.
I wouldn't have minded it. But Jeff Bond had already done a great book about the music of Star Trek. So we thought, you know what, we want to do as much as we can of things that hadn't been touched before. Yeah, that had not been touched before.
Right.
So things like the hairstylist and things like that. So I was
going to say, I love that you've got these you've got a style sheet for it. So this is Ken Ralston and Jim Valou, who are visual effects, and visual effects over the years has gotten its, even for Wrath of Khan. I mean, visual effects is a world, and with a fan base, starting with Cinefex magazine, right, and onward, that gets a lot of detail in there. But then what I love, you've got a page for Judy Elkins, who I love, and I know, we know her from DS9. Well, some people do. A lot of people don't know her at all. And the fact that she was working at ILM there. But you've got all these pages, and you get on in here, but you've got not just the DP, Gain, right? But you've got the camera operator, and you've got the stunt coordinator. And because the movies, people would come and go. It's not like the series where people got to do 150, 180 episodes over time, or even multiple series, and we get to know them in all those professions. And that's part of my but I love the way you get, as you go deeper and deeper. I was like, oh my gosh, you guys have so many of the staff. Did I just see one here? So many of the creative staff. This is the most awkward book show off ever, but and you've got script pages in with revisions too. But
Yeah.
let me put this down, rest of my hand. But thank you for doing that, because number one, nobody pays attention to them anyway. We try to. A lot of them have passed, and with the movies especially, they tended to be different for each movie. So
Yeah, Judy Elkins was so kind. She sat with us for a long
tickles me
time.
so much.
Yes, and she answered. She's patient with our questions because we had a lot of questions.
She really walked us through what I mean, just the intricacies. Because I mean, one of the great shots in the film is when the Reliant raises the Enterprise with these this laser, cut across, and she walked us through how that would have been done and what her contribution was to that, and with what Ken Ralston did with that, and the genius of not having to destroy the actual model because it was too expensive. You wouldn't want to do that to burn a hole, etch a hole in along the side of it. And Ken Ralston too. I got to to talk to him. It was like talking to Michelangelo of special effects. I mean, he was part of the original team on Star Wars, and of course contributed to so many Star Trek films. But and not just in special effects, but he, kind of a jack of all trades, right? To puppet design, puppet operating, just a lot of different things. And that's one of our, really the behind the scenes people in Star Trek. Just, I mean, even from the TV show, Doug Drexler, the Akutas, everybody, they're so generous and with their time, especially to people like us who are not in that world. I don't know how they do special effects, and to have them teach us was like getting a master class, in how they did special effects then and how it differs from now. It was fascinating to learn about the opinions of how things have changed, and not necessarily for the better in the world.
For the better, right? Yeah. That is the thing about today. Because I go back again, bless you all for doing this, because all the older movies deserve a treatment like this. Because back in the day, what did you have? You had limited media, and Alan Ashman, who just passed away, did do a making of book. But number one, on top of the limits of it's paper. It's the early 80s. The geeks have not totally won yet. So they're hedging on how many it's going to sell. They're looking at the motion picture, and they blew the wad on publications and books and licensed toys and merch. And of course, it didn't go through the roof, but they felt a compulsion to do some kind of a making of book, because people were still buying the making of, Stephen Whitfield's Pose book. So there was that, but then you had the real life two things that you can't control. One, and I ran into this with a companion, is they want a book at the time the movie comes out in the day. So all the publishing deadlines, if you're going to be contemporary, you have to stop writing 3 and 4 and 5 months before. Well, he's not writing during the reshoots, right? And they added on scene and the whole change of heart. But the other thing is, even if he'd had that was highly sensitive and spoilerific, and they're not going to put that in a book that comes out at the time. You got to let the 10 or the 20-year cycle of the statute of limitations expire with all that. Much less everything about that Nick was really the scriptwriter and pulled 5 together and all that. They couldn't be, they couldn't admit that, and they didn't adjudicate that with. So he didn't have the writing script. So just the way the credits had to be before the time would go by and the truth. So now you can talk about all these things.
Yeah, in fact, one of the fun things in the book is we talk about the novelization and the sort of the struggle behind the scenes. How do you release the novel for a film that has an ending where they're even talking about it on Mork and Mindy? I mean, it was before the film came out. It was everywhere. Will Spock die? Is Spock going to die? We talk about Steve Sansweet. Of course, fans from Star Wars know Steve Sansweet, who was the editor at the Wall Street Journal at that time. And his article is the article that Leonard Nimoy saw in China that started the whole, what's going on with what he was reporting on the fan backlash that was existing before the film was out. And in that article revealed a lot of what the story was going to be. And different reactions. That article played a big role.
Right.
But it was interesting for them to figure out, how do we do a novelization to this movie? Release it at the time of the film. As you mentioned, these things needed to be out when the film was out. It isn't like today, again, the novelization to the Star Wars films come out 6 months later, or when with the release of the Blu-rays or whatever. The idea was they knew that they would lose sales if they didn't release it at the exact time the movie was out. And that's just a fun story, just researching that kind of thing, you know.
And the options that they debated.
the crazy options they had.
Like what? Like what?
Well, one was
you would go into the bookstore to pick up the last chapter.
You'd buy the book; it didn't have the last chapter,
and you had to go back later to get it.
You had to go
back. That's amazing. I never had. Was that like? Had that ever been done with anything else?
I don't think so. I've never heard of that, so I couldn't believe that. Like,
oh my god! In the clunky ink and paper days, that was amazing.
And then how would you? I mean, I guess you'd have to prove that, you know, you have to have a receipt. And
I mean, it's like a precursor to downloading something now, but that's digital and halfway, you know, easy to do. It's still clunky, but I had never heard that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and then another option was to release it with multiple endings. So
like
you don't know,
adventure.
You don't know which one is the real ending. So it would all be in the same book. You'd get it would all the endings would be in the book, but you don't know whether it was ending A, B, or C.
This is like a mirror universe Clue.
It's kind of like a choose your own adventure. So it's like I read and then I jump to this page, and then I read and I go to this page.
So that was really fun. That was all through the paperwork in Nick Meyer's collection. That was sort of hidden, these little gem memos that were hidden in there, you know.
I kind of wish they went the option of the multiple endings, because then it's kind of like the multiverse. You can have like, well, in this universe this happened, and this universe this happened, and so, you know, there's a world where Khan lives.
So, you know, so our friends Mark and Scott and Darren have got that 1982 documentary going about the geek, you know, 1982 and the 80s in general. And this was a time, because it lingered into the 90s, but there was a real collision going on that was about to explode. The geeks hadn't totally won yet, but they were on the verge. We were about to explode with personal computers, you know, and then all that revolution. The internet wasn't here, but it was the critical mass buildup behind it. And you're talking about this alternate endings in the book. They wouldn't have had social media and the internet to deal with. But the first thing that hits me was, are they ready to deal with the fandom debating which of the 4 or 5 endings should have been done? I mean, there would have been the publicist would have gone, that's great publicity. But if it turns into the hate, you know, it would have been slow motion paper and stamps fandom. But that just blows me away, because it was one thing, and I hope you get into this, because I heard the story for years from, say, like Richard Arnold, you know, late great Richard Arnold, but talking about the whole thing about Khan recognizing Chekhov, and Chekhov wasn't in the crew during Space Sea first season, and all of that, and actually, you know, which they'd shot the movie, so it was going to be something to realize. I mean, maybe you could have fixed a line or two and been clunky about it, but they didn't want to be that inelegant. So he raises that up, and it goes up the line through, you know, Susan and Jean and Harv, and that attitude that he says Harv said, oh, no one's going to remember that. That collision of standard Hollywood attitude movie making with the reality of, hello, Star Trek fandom not only enabled Star Wars to happen, but Star Trek built the internet. Star Trek wrote the book on everything about modern fandom and enabled Comic-Cons, because we broke the mold from, you know, but all of that was about to come head to head. So I'm sitting here thinking, I remember how they had to scramble a little bit and make a joke out of it. And, you know, Walter did about that, much less if they had given people 5 endings, and then the world would have been all over. What was I don't know if, I mean, you said this is in his papers, in Nick's papers. Did they get as far as devising scenarios for the other endings, or was that just all talk?
I don't think they did. I think what in that memo is the idea of, what if we do a day and date release, which was unusual back then, because oftentimes the Star Wars, what was the book out?
6 months.
6 months
before.
before.
Star Wars came out, it was like November 12th of 76.
So it was always
Well, they were
significantly
desperate to think we need to build an audience up just to go see it. It was completely
Right.
the reverse. Yeah.
So they were like that's what they decided on eventually, was to do the date of the film, because their view was, look, the fans are going to go see the film, they're going to know the ending, then they're going to go drop by the bookstore, buy the book, and then then they'll know the ending. So they went with that idea of like, we're not shipping it to the bookstores till it can get there on the day, then they can open the box on the day and put it up on the shelves on the day. And that was sort of the solution that they came from. But yeah, talking about that summer of '82, I mean, that was, even not only was Wrath of Khan going against competition like E.T. and that sort of thing, but even Raiders of the Lost Ark was re-released in '82. A lot of people don't know that, but that was a pretty common thing, to because we didn't have VCRs and they didn't go straight to to Blu-ray or to streaming back then. So you would often get a film be re-released the next year if it had been popular the year before. So Raiders of the Lost Ark had a really wide release again in the summer of '82, a year after it had been in theaters. And you had sort of surrounding this movie is Rocky, and I mean, you have all these different films that are sort of surrounding this picture. And yet it held its own. In fact, it opened, Wrath of Khan opened as the highest grossing opening weekend in film history, even beating Empire Strikes Back, which is just incredible. And that I always remember that summer, just the incredible amount of science fiction there, and how you couldn't turn on the nightly news and not see them talking about science fiction, really for the first time. Other than say one-offs like Star Wars,
Right. I'm just looking at my novels. You're talking about this book timing. I think I had the book the day before, because I remember I was laying on my mom's sofa, like laid out with my reading like this, and I got to the ending, and I remember choking up when Kirk said, spoiler, when Kirk says his was the most human, and I remember choking up then, not in the theater. So maybe it was spoiled. I mean, nothing can replace seeing the movie versus reading it. But I do remember the fact, and then having a meta moment just a moment later, going, "Wow, this is already out. Isn't this like, we didn't say spoiling, but isn't this giving away the movie here at the end?" I remember thinking that we were a day or two away from seeing it. What so with all the good background, working with Nick over the years, doing all the individual pieces. Talking to Titan, adding in the extra text, and thank you. As I was trying to say, there have been articles. You can go back and research individual long pieces, right? But as far as a book treatment, this is really the first in-depth about Wrath of Khan since Asherman's Same Day, right? Contemporary one, isn't it? There hasn't been
absolutely. Yeah,
a real texty. There've been probably some photo books maybe along the way, some softbounds or something, but
yeah, this is the first one. And also I one of the things we wanted to do in there is having a decent sense as fans ourselves of kind of what everyone knows, like what's been on the documentaries, what's been on we really tried to, you have to tell some of that to tell the story.
Right.
But we skipped over, that as quick as possible to get to the stuff that people maybe had never heard before. So there's one of the things we encourage people to do is sometimes with photo books, you just sort of look at the pictures, make sure you read everything, because even the captions, there's little nuggets in those captions, like what happened to Khan's wig? After that movie, it wound up in another movie by Nick Meyer. Where is that? Who's wearing Khan's wig? Little things like that, little nuggets of information that we were able to sort of find out just through the little,
because it turns into a space. We're dealing with finite paper, not digital. So after a while, I mean, I can totally see that you're cramming information even into a caption that otherwise might have got left out or got squeezed out of text, I'm betting.
And then we were very proud of the fact that we were able to finally tell, and we wanted to take the time to do that. So it's a whole chapter on what were the scripts before, because you can kind of go to Wikipedia and get like this little, there was this and there was this, and they give you a general thing, because there was a really great, and we detail it in the book, there was a great fake out that Jack B. Soward's script was going to start off with, which was you hear Kirk's voice and then you see the Reliant. Now at this time, the Reliant was a Constitution class, so it was the same. It would have looked like the Enterprise minus the name the name being different. So you would see the silhouette, you would see the Enterprise, and you would hear Kirk's voice, and it would be a captain's log, and you would be like, whoa. And he's talking about Khan. And then when you go into the ship, it would pan up and you would go up the ship and it would go into the bridge and you would see the name Reliance. So now you're starting to wonder what's going on. And what it is it's Chekhov listening to Kirk's old log. And that was before Khan became the exposition giver in the movie, where he explains who he was and what he was all about and how he knew Chekhov, which he didn't. It came through Kirk's log at the beginning. They were literally going to do like a last time on Star Trek kind of thing at the start. And those types of little gems and who Savick was originally, and how the film started off. We really wanted to be detailed because we were fascinated by that detail.
None of this had been, like you said. Now, I'll tell you that we've got the scripts at the Roddenberry archives, and I've wanted to get into this on the Trek Files. Maybe we should have you come on. But I didn't know how to. We have our little 15, 20-minute format, and we've been struggling with this and the 70s movies about how to get our arms around in our format and talk about these sprawly, kind of situations. But I'm so glad you've got this out for once. We're finally attacking this and looking and seeing the pieces, because it's fascinating. It's fascinating what Nick Meyer did in 3 or 4 or 5 days. Yeah. And then don't give me credit. Don't pay me. Let's just get the damn movie made.
Yeah. I mean, a real commitment there, because that he was, he took these very disparate things. And I'll tell you that there's elements. You see the elements in Meyer's scripts of the previous scripts. But it's almost like saying you see, there's a weird analogy, but a perfect pizza, right? And then you see it doesn't look so great when it's just a piece of pepperoni or a piece of, a glob of cheese or whatever. But you need those, though. Everything, all those script versions, the Jack B. Sowards and it was Sowards who came up with the Kobayashi Maru. I mean, there's a lot of those elements that find a way, but Nick made it so literate and beautiful and intelligent and thoughtful, and took out all the parts that didn't make sense. And I loved how they were willing to censor themselves. In other words, so one of the things that we sort of, one of the struggles was, and one of the cool things about the film that everybody knows, is that Kirk and Khan are never in the same room together. They only talk to one another via the view screen. But there always was, in every version of the script, including Nicholas Meyer's first version, a mano a mano fight between the two of them. There always was a physical fight between Khan and Kirk. And when you read that even in the Meyer version, which is probably the best version of it, the Sowards version is interesting because Khan has these mental powers and he's like able to conjure images. So Kirk is like fighting both Khan and hallucinations at the same time. Him and David are fighting Khan together in the Sowards version. And Meyer improves it, I think, makes it better. But the thing that's really interesting is how that I think they knew when you're looking at this fight, it's like it was unnecessary. You didn't need it. It didn't move the story forward. So they were willing to take that out. And even though you would think you have to have they were proceeding from a place of, we have to get them in one scene. We can't do the whole movie with them never physically. It's like, yeah, you can if you craft it right. Yeah. And it just great. And
find it themselves.
And they did and they edited even like the fight.
Yeah, with the fight between Kirk and his son. You can see it in the key art. So when you look at the poster, there's that shot with David having the knife at Kirk's neck, but that was edited. And
wasn't there either a really early preview or like a reel for Show West or some trade show where there's a little bit of that? Or maybe I'm thinking of deleted or blooper. I thought there was the images on the poster, but I thought there was.
There
Yeah,
is
you
a
can
there's a there's
see.
a oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was going to say you can see the photos that we found. You can see them rehearsing it. There's some great pictures. They're like in a robe, and you've got a stunt coordinator there helping with it. But yeah, they thought it was going to be because Kirk was going to lose. So that would be just another loss, and it's one too many losses because he lost um, uh,
Against Khan
lost Khan, and then he lost I
with
want to say
David
in Preston.
and Preston. Yeah, I mean, it
Yes, in
was like
sick bay, where he
lose, lose,
literally
lose.
has
Yeah.
the blood of Preston on his uniform.
Right.
So this would have been another loss.
One
So it's
loss,
too
yeah.
many.
Rule of threes or whatever. Well, I see you get into everything from the whole thing about it started off on a TV movie budget scope with this, which I don't know how often that happened. Like, well, if it's good enough, we'll just put it right to theaters.
Yeah, that was one of the big questions we wanted to finally answer, because when you talk to different people, you get different responses. And even on the Blu-rays and DVDs and commentaries and stuff, there's these sort of differing history on this. So when you ask so someone like Nicholas Meyer, it was only ever a feature film for him. He was brought in when it was a feature film. So of course he would have no recollection or knowledge of it ever having been considered as a TV movie of the week. But we were lucky we had the paperwork. So we had the memos, and it was always budgeted initially. It wasn't budgeted as we're going to budget it as a movie of the week and put it in theaters. It was budgeted as it was a movie of the week. It was going to be on television, which is why Harve Bennett was brought in, because he had just been hired 2 weeks before to beef up Paramount's television division. That was his mandate there. He wasn't brought in to be a filmmaker. He was brought in to do what he did for Universal at Paramount, to create these like really popular franchise type of shows. And but as it went along, and as Charlie Bluedorn had more confidence in this project, it was switched, and it was switched before Nick Meyer was brought on. And we have the memos that talk about, well, okay, now we're moving to feature, and now here's what so now Kirk's quarters goes from this cost to this cost, and that's why they needed, when it was a TV movie of the week, Kirk's quarters was going to be 2 stories, and they had to cut it down to 1 story because the budget was going to increase, but they also were going to increase in other areas, and they didn't have unlimited
visual effects. They needed, they had to have the visual. Well, again, I'm flipping through. I'm just so glad you got a page here for Mike Miner. You got a page for and Carol Lee Cole. I always knew Lee Cole. I met her. I see you don't have a photo of her. I met her and have a photo of her from when she came and worked on Enterprise. But there's very little out about the motion picture too. But do you I'm sure you do. Do you get into the whole turnaround on Leonard's attitude, and then the decision to do the reshoots and the whole process that led to ending the ending or softening the ending?
Yeah, and thankfully we got, we were able to talk to Julie Nimoy, who does our forward in the book, and we talked with
Anita Montalban.
Days before she passed away.
Wow.
Just emailed us her responses. So it's just touching, and the Montalban family is just so supportive and beautiful, as is the Nimoy family. Were very supportive of this project. And so we were able, in the book, there are pages that are dedicated to a daughter remembers. And it's their words about their father working on these movies. And there's the one for Julie. And I think the idea with Leonard was that he felt that the first film, he didn't have enough. He had a lot of power, of course, as Spock, right? But he didn't have enough power. No one person would have, not Gene Roddenberry, anyone, to correct what he felt were the problems with that film, because it was just this juggernaut that went along, but also
octopus that kind
yeah.
of yeah.
But yeah, it was still, I mean, I think was, when you look at it now, and I think time has been more kind to it, it was quite an accomplishment, right? That was an amazing feat.
Well,
to
the
take.
director's 4K, that I keep saying the ending scene in the V'ger Bowl, the temple, is not what I saw 40 years ago or whatever. I mean, it's like a totally different scene, and it makes so much more sense. Just with sound and the color grading and tightening up the edits, and anyway, it's amazing. But yes,
Yeah. So I just, you know, that was, I think he was concerned that, you know, do we do another one? And I think from looking at the interviews with Harve Bennett, from talking to the families, from looking at even Leonard's own words, as he became more open later, right? As he was older and he could kind of open up about stuff. He had never placed a condition that Spock die. That's one of the, I think people think that. They think, well, I'll play it only if he dies. What it was they came to him with the idea, what if he dies? Like, how about playing that? And he wanted to be part of the project. He talks about that in his own book, but he wanted to kind of do it in a way that would be, he needed to contribute to the story, he felt, in a meaningful way. And once he saw that and saw Meyer's script, and so I think he realized that they were on the right path, and I think he was happy about that. And then, of course, as they're filming it, they're having this great time filming it. And Julie talks about in the book about that drive the day he was filming the death scene, and the sort of focus that he had, and maybe even regret about that, about
in the moment,
and that what and I think that's where they sort of had that idea and kind of came up with, well, how is there any way we can keep this character? Is a possibility that he can come back, and that was really all like last minute. None of that was in there. Were the you know, the remember stuff. Yeah, it was all added late in the game.
Well, and then you have a chapter at the end about the merchandise and the reaction and all that. I gone blank on her name, but it was either the New York Times or one of the major reviewers. Her whole headline was, "Now that's more like it," or her opening line.
Was that the one, I think, who talked about Montalban's performance, that he should be in Shakespeare?
He should have been Macbeth. I mean, and he really did. I've always felt that he deserved an Academy Award nomination for this film, I think, as a supporting actor. It's funny because in the car, or at least one time he was talking with his daughter, talking about how, you know, I'm only on screen for like, the number of minutes he's on screen is like 13 minutes, like so little. But you don't, because they're always talking. His agent, in fact, he was a little concerned by the script. He said he would do it because he had seen Nick Meyer's work before and wanted to work with him. So that became the final reason why he said yes, because Montalban was very concerned that he was worried about returning to the.
What happened here? Oh no, this is not good, folks. I don't know. I'm going to have you come back, guys, if you can do that. Can you do that? There we go. I see. We opted not to tell you certain details. Well, let's finish. Let's have them come back in. Here we go. Yay.
Sorry.
And don't ever do that again.
We lost internet actually 10 minutes before we were coming on here. Xfinity's doing work in the area, but they never gave us a heads up about it.
Oh well. Well, you were in this engrossing story about Ricardo Montalban's reasons for finally doing it.
So he had, he was nervous about doing it because he was worried about finding his voice. Mary Jo had said that, and the two kind of things that kind of made him want to do it was mainly Nick Meyer. He talks about that with in an interview with Starlog.
No. Xfinity, how can you? Let me try this again. I'm going to. Sorry, gang. This is upsetting, but it sounds like we at least know what's going on. What's weird is I see 4 green bars here. I don't know if I remove you, if that means they can't get back in. Here we go. Hey,
I'm gonna finish this story if it's the last thing I do. Anyway, we switched to a different internet thing, so hopefully that won't happen.
There we go.
So anyway, the idea was that he wanted to do it because Nick Meyer wrote it, but he talked to his agent, and his agent said, "Look, when you're not on screen, they're talking about you, so you dominate this film." At that time, it wasn't named The Wrath of Khan, but then it was named The Undiscovered Country. But it would eventually also have his name in the title, which would also reinforce the idea that he was a bigger presence in the film.
Right.
And he's the biggest picture on the movie poster.
Yes.
By Bob Peak. This is a wonderful cover by Bob Peak, who did the artwork for many of the Star Trek films. We love that cover.
And while we're on the topic of Ricardo Montalban, one question that we always get at presentations, and one that people still are talking about to this day, and people are still saying, "Oh, it's not real." They ask about Khan's chest, and it is real. And we talk in the book. His daughter Anita shared with us his routine, like what he did to get ready for the role, and that is his chest. And another thing you can do too is go watch Fantasy Island, and there are episodes where he's getting out of the ocean. You see him, and he's just in his swim trunks, and you see his chest. And even late in his life, when he was in a wheelchair, he still worked out. He would use the hand bike, so he still worked his upper body. So he maintained his strength and his like just had this really regal presence. I mean,
we talked to Robert Rodriguez once, who's directed the Spy Kids films, and asked him about.
Sorry.
That was okay. Yes. We asked him about Ricardo, and he said one of the reasons that he had Ricardo walking around in one of the films, I think in the third Spy Kid film,
Spy Kids 3,
was because he had taken these publicity photos, and he's sitting in his wheelchair, and he is so incredibly strong in that chair. He just his presence, I don't want to say pride, because Ricardo would not have liked that, because he wasn't proud in a vain way, but the sort of pride that he had in himself, and that inspired him to want to have him be walking again in that third film, even if just imaginarily, and that because it was so believable that he could still have strength at that age. But yeah, that was great. And that was one of the great things that Anita shared with us. Mary Jo had mentioned how the commitment level.
And their daughter.
Yeah, Anita Montalban shared how he worked out every day for that role, and also rehearsed a lot. Him and there were rehearsals at. In fact, that was one of the things that impressed us. We had always been impressed with Nick Meyer, but when you hear the stories of modern filmmaking, and how they have to go back and refilm and refilm and refilm and refilm, so like almost sometimes the whole movie, because they don't do a good job pre-planning. And one of the things that we learned from Nick Meyer was how much pre-planning they did, because he knew that the more you can pre-plan, the less time you're wasting, the less money you're wasting. So they did rehearsals at his house with the cast, and they rehearsed the roles, and they would give him notes like, Uhura wouldn't, Nichelle Nichols say, Uhura might do this instead. And then they would take notes on that. And also Ricardo and Judson Scott would rehearse at Ricardo's home,
Mm-hmm.
where they rehearsed it as if they were father and son. That was their mentality. They saw the characters as
that's the
father.
question. Another question
Yeah.
that you get into here and
Yeah.
explore that a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you were talking about the Bob. I had to do this. You were talking about the Bob Peak covers. So those movie posters, I say the covers, the posters were so good that's what Lower Decks parodies every season. So the second season of Lower Decks is a parody of the Wrath of that color palette, the whole thing. Anyway, I wanted to point that out. So a couple of things, and we should let you go and wrap it up. But and I wanted to get to some questions. So I'm going to back scroll. Even after all these years of working, was there any one big surprise, even as you just sat down to work on the book? And there are probably more than one, which that may not be fair. And the other thing is, what did you have to leave out when you were hitting? I'm sure there were some things that you mentioned a couple things on the side, but was there anything that you really hated not to be able to? You couldn't squeeze it in anywhere, even over 47 different captions or something.
Well, there certainly were pictures, because again, we're limited to the amount in the book and the text in the book. So I don't know, were we recording when you talked about my mind is going James Horner? That was something we wish we did more. Kirk's apartment, when you look out the window and you see San Francisco, that is a small portion of a larger matte painting from the Towering Inferno. So we weren't able to get the rights to put that in the book.
And mention the image?
Well, no, the actual painting, to put an image of the painting.
It's mentioned in there, but we thought it would be cool to have the original painting next to the way it is in the film.
Because it's a portion.
They rented it. They rented it for
yes, that's what they did.
And then blew it up.
It's just a portion of it. It's not the whole painting.
And then there were a couple stories we wanted to tell and we couldn't tell. One was, I really wanted to get even more into the fan reaction. Paramount has a lot of photos of the premieres in Los Angeles, and so when fans were seeing it, including a great picture of Denise Ikuda as a fan, just happened to take that photo while she was seeing Wrath of Khan. And that was just like, oh, that's Denise Ikuda, what she's doing.
We recognize it right away.
But there were issues about, do we have permissions for the people to be in the book, and to just show the lines and because you see those a lot for the Star Wars films, the pictures of the lines, that were in newspapers and things. And we wanted to put that kind of thing in there. We would have liked to have done a little bit more on the collectible side, because there were a little more than people think there was for the film. There wasn't as much as motion picture. There was no Happy Meal.
Well, they were going to pull, but they kind of overshot and pulled back. But why? Before you go on, what was why couldn't you have photos of long lines, or you didn't?
Well, we did. We were able to get a couple pictures in there. There's like a great picture in the book of the actors kind of passing out swag, I guess, to fans, in the line. I think there was just a question of like, well, they weren't sure, because the photos are 40 years old, what permissions they had on those photos. So it was a question of, could we put it in there? Should we put it in there? That kind of thing. There were a lot more pictures of the Khan baby. So we talk about the Khan baby.
Oh, I meant to ask you about that. Yes.
And we kind of try to set the record straight on who the Khan baby was. He was not Khan's baby, although in one version of the script, Khan does have a baby that survived after Marlowe was killed. But that wasn't the baby. That was like a toddler the idea of the Khan baby was just the idea that Khan was sacrificing his people's future by going after Kirk. They had left the planet. He could have went anywhere in the universe and started a life anew someplace else. And his obsession cost him everything, including the future of his own people, who were trying to survive even in these conditions. They were having children and so on. And of course, the concept was that, and they did film, you can hear in the work print, you can hear that we were able to get the work print, and you can see that the images, and you can hear the Khan baby, and it is in the novelization, that part where Chekhov sees the Khan baby. They call him Khan baby because he kind of looks like Khan. He's got the mullet and little
and the
cute little kid who looks like Khan, but was not Khan's son. Sees him through a portal. There's a crib that they see. There's that kind of thing.
Well, I've seen the stills. I've seen contact sheets of the still. Yeah.
And then it was going to be in a second part, which was the baby was going to be attracted by the lights of the Genesis device and be the first one to blow up when the Genesis device blew up, which of course would have been a whole level of darkness that Star Trek had never touched before. Well, the actor playing the role, you could understand, they had a helicopter light in that thing. It was scary. And so the baby was scared by it. And we have these wonderful set of photos.
Yeah, all these little
of Craig Denault. Yeah, Craig Denault trying to acclimate the baby. And the baby's looking, and the baby's looking, and the baby, and
they're getting closer, and then the baby starts crying, and you can see he's really not liking it, and he's really like turning and clinging towards Craig. So they weren't able to get any usable footage of that. So even if they wanted to go with that storyline, it wasn't working the day that they were filming.
And it was a happy accident because they
wouldn't have. Yeah,
they would not have gone well.
I'm just sitting here thinking of the little kid that would have been Sulu's great grandson that couldn't do the scene as they were in Star Trek 4. It's like Star Trek and kids was not doing well for the movie era.
No. Yeah. So we would have loved for fans to see those photos because it gives you a little idea what the scene might have looked like. There is a picture in there of Nick Meyer with the baby crawling towards him. As they sort of tried to work with him, but
that was another rights issue.
That was a rights issue as well because we can't identify the actor. No one knows who it is. Yeah,
the baby. Yeah,
yeah, it had to be under a year old, I would say.
And then can't find it. I'm trying to think. What did Nick's papers at Iowa? I always want to say Ames, but that's Iowa State.
Right.
University of Iowa is where.
Yeah.
I've just gone blank.
It's right outside of Riverside, Iowa.
Yeah, it's right outside Riverside, Iowa, which is cool. It's about 10 minutes from there.
What's the city?
It's in Iowa City.
Iowa City.
Yeah, but it's cool if you ever go to Trek Fest during the summer there. You can just head over to the Nick Meyer collection. It's like 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away.
Did Nick's collection at Iowa have call sheets and production memos?
It did have, like, for the call sheet for the day of filming with the baby, you can see it calls for a baby. Well, actually calls for 2 babies because of how many hours you can be on the set, and a social worker. So you can see
no names.
No names.
No name. It said baby, 2 babies and the social worker. Yeah.
We need to put out I'll add this to my who actually built the Botany Bay model for Space Seed. I'll add that to the list. Who actually was the baby? Stand up and
baby. Who had that mullet?
Yeah.
I only be in their 40s now, so.
Yeah.
Anyway. Listen, let me backtrack. I didn't mean to keep you guys so long, but I'm going to let's see.
I see Michael's comment about they wonder if the Khan baby actor knows. They were almost in the movie.
Let me see. Duralta in Germany says, was teaching your first love or was it writing? I'm going to say
definitely teaching.
Definitely teaching. Yeah. I mean, the two kind of go hand in hand a little bit because teaching's a lot like acting. You write your own script and you perform it in front of an audience and it either works or doesn't work. And you change it the next time you do that performance.
Or more like improv or something, or improv with an outline.
But, and we had published, academic material before, social movement bibliography. There's a page turner we wrote. This was really a labor of love. So it was very easy to write.
Yeah. Duralta is my Mr. Question Man. Now he says, what was your favorite aspect of using Star Trek or whatever in sociology?
Yeah, John taught an actual class, sociology of Star Wars and sociology of the 1970s. And he's had all these specialty classes, which have been fun. But we also enjoy just working Star Trek into our introduction to sociology classes or social problems or sociology of deviant behavior, because as I think we said earlier, it just works so well. There's so many applications. I just showed Star Trek to my students. I showed them a segment of The Next Generation Ethics when Worf is injured. It's a great example for cultural relativism. So we're always using it in our class.
They just referenced that on was on the lower decks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're she's falling apart. Oh, you're disobeying my, kill me, or else you're disrespecting my culture.
Yes.
What? I'm a doctor. Do no harm. You're harming my culture. Let me see. See if I can find some more.
I see aggressively relaxing. Yeah, you need to have a Star Trek the Motion Picture Happy Meal box. Yes.
Yeah. Now, I just want to say, Justin, I'm not. This is an awesome book. I was praising it. What I'm saying is, in my head, coffee table books tend to be more as they did the first blush with this one. They said we want a photo book with like connective text, and this is much more than that. That's what I was trying to say. So by that measure, yes, it's one of the best coffee table books ever. Please put it on your coffee table and have it out for people to see.
Thank you.
Yes. It's been out for a few weeks. We didn't get to do this right at the release date, which better late. We're on the second wave now. So if you need something for Christmas, you need something for the holidays or for birthdays or whatever, there you go. Michael, do we have I'm going to let you guys answer this. Do you have a favorite ship, a favorite toy, a favorite doll action figure there, buddy?
Well, mine is easy. I like the marshmallow dispenser that Kraft made. I just love quirky things like that. And I love anything that is a collectible, but also very practical at the same time. So Star Trek paper clips, Star Trek cookie cutters, things like that. Things that
Enterprise pizza cutter.
Yes, we use it every
in my kitchen. I don't know why I did that.
Yeah, but we use it every Saturday. We have pizza. So I love things that you can that are functional, but they're also showing your fandom. That's my favorite.
And I'm a big action figure fan, so I like the whole. I mean, I love Playmates toys from the 90s. They're making some really great ones now too. Yeah, and they're making great ones now too. And a lot of companies are doing some great figures now. And
Mego is coming back and doing.
And I love the Megos. That's of course my I have a soft spot in my heart for the Mego Enterprise Bridge 1970s. The bridge play set. That was one of my favorite. Still have mine.
Looking for actual questions, guys. And I've back scrolled just so you know, which they're used to me doing. Okay. May not have any. Let's see.
I saw one over here.
You guys saw one that you can jump on.
Yeah, I saw one by Rose. Says, how long did the book actually take to complete?
Yeah.
That irony is it took us longer to write the book than it did for them to make the movie.
Yeah, it was a 3-year process till it came out. Part of that was the pandemic, of course, but along with its much more serious consequences. One of the things it did is made book publishing about a year behind on a lot of things. This was meant to be out for the 40th anniversary. And the book was ready, but the manuscript was ready. We were done with it, but there was a lot of work Titan had to do to contact for permissions, particularly for a lot of Robert Fletcher's items. We wanted permission there too. And so, it took 3 years, but a great 3 years. We were happy, that went that way. And then a favorite, being able to interview. We talked with Nick Meyer a couple times in our lives. We email a lot with each other, just stuff that doesn't have anything to do with Star Trek necessarily, sometimes Sherlock Holmes or whatever. But to sit down and interview him, but to come up with questions that he hadn't been asked before, we couldn't just go get. One of the things when you write a licensed book, which is nice, is that you can access any other licensed product that. So Larry is in our book because we reference the Communicator when Larry was editor, and interviews that Larry had done or Dan Madsen had done or whatever it happened to be. And so, you have access to all these wonderful
Or
resources.
Alan Asherman.
Or Alan Asherman is in fact, we thanked Alan in the book just because I grew up with his book, right? I mean, his book to me was,
and that was a lot of people had no idea, still to this day had no idea that book existed, who were young and fans at the time.
It was great. Yeah. I mean, we
well printed, distributed.
He charted that course in Star Trek 2 for the making of, as did Kay Anderson at Cinefantastique.
Yes.
Had a fantastique article that went multiple pages. That was a tremendous resource for us. So there were all these different things that we can go into with that, but to be able to talk to Ken Ralston and Judy Elkins and Laura Banks, who was on set with Ricardo Montalban every day as Khan's helmsman, working the helmsperson, working the Reliant. That was
an amazing story.
That was great, and just lots of details about that they were dreams come true to be able to talk to people, and to do it Zoom to Zoom.
right. In the thing, I'm just gonna say I'm so jealous and envious of you guys and everybody else. I had like 3 months, 6 months. Did it on my own, and then wrap up 3 months. The Stellar Cartography, the first edition, was like 3 months. I hear you guys talk about, I've never had a situation where I felt like I could like do it and then it was done, because there was always some, but I'm glad. I'm glad because you really had a lot of things that had been long overlooked or not explored.
It was interesting because we had to keep going back and making little tweaks, unfortunate little tweaks, like when Kirstie Alley passed away. Just little changes, things that the announcement of the Khan podcast that Nick Meyer's writing, the audio adventure, things like that some were happy, some were sad. So we were grateful that we were able to make the book as up to date as we could. It didn't get locked into like March of this year. But how long was the turnaround on the compendium, on the next gen books that you did?
I had 3 months to do it.
Yeah,
because they thought I had written it all, but I had the background, but I hadn't got to interview any creators. I didn't have any organic. I had trivia from watching, credits and trivia from watching the thing, but I didn't, because in my mind, I had to hit the bar that Steve Poe and Alan Asherman had been at, or else I was going to be another cheap book that a few people got and said, oh, they've stuck Star Trek on this for me to go buy it. And, it's like in my head, I didn't want to be that person. And then it turned into 6 months because Leonard was having a dispute with licensing over Image. And they tried to over commercials with Barney and Fred and the Vulcaneers on the Fruity Pebbles commercial. And I got 3 extra months. And then they didn't even release the first edition with Spock on the next gen, on Unification. They used not Spock photos. And then after 2 or 3 small micro printings, they put, the biggest event of the first 5 seasons, and we didn't have images from it. But that I learned so much about publishing. And also that even in Hollywood, even with books, the pictures are more important than the words, because I got to do, nobody cared about what I wrote, but it was those pictures that hung us up for 3. Anyway.
Well, the pictures are really great. Bruce Bermelin did the photos most of the photos that are in the book. It was a set.
Here's one thing I want to ask you. These full page photos did they just do a really incredible digitization process and up-res things, because they're gorgeous?
Yes, they were.
I know they were. A lot of them were just shot as 35 millimeters. They weren't big format, transparency.
Yeah, they did an amazing job with the graphic arts in this book. We were so happy. I mean, if you had seen what we submitted the raw photo, with a caption under each photo. So we told them what caption we wanted to go with, what photo, where the photo would go. That kind of thing, but they just put it together in such a beautiful way. We were so happy with it. And some of those pictures we were worried about whether they'd make it because of the resolution issues. And they were able to just do a great job.
Yeah. I'm going to do a couple real quick ones here. Just sorry on this, Duralta. Al Smutko was the construction coordinator. In other words, he was the head guy of the builders who actually were in the shop, in the mill, building sets, plywood, 2x4s, that kind of thing. And then having the fiberglass people or the whatever. So he was the construction coordinator. And he
I have to
retired
applaud.
at the
I have to
end
applaud,
of
by the way. His
Sorry?
name was on screen. His name was on screen, so I have to
Oh.
applaud.
And my friend Tamara would say, Al Smutko, every week. So here's another one. Melanie, when I can paraphrase for you guys, pretending to read the score, they were just doing a posed shot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
They
were.
had the music laid out on the table, and they're just standing over it, looking at.
Yeah, looking at it like that. Yeah.
Oh, and pointing. Yes.
There's
Directors point up in the air. Composers will point at the score.
Yeah, I mean, we're of course we're huge fans of James Horner. We got to contribute to when they did the expanded score. We were able to contribute the images to that, and I mean that was the thrill of a lifetime to have your name in that. Have our name in that book. I mean, the liner notes.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that somewhere somebody took photos, private photos, something of him conducting that orchestra, because he was there. It was a
short amount of time.
It was very short. It was within days that they did that whole. I mean, it was a very quick turnaround on everything.
I'm assuming you checked in with people like Jeff Bond, and people, the known suspects that might know about.
Yeah, I just, there's like I said, there's that one photo that we found. That I wonder if he has a private, because there's a great picture of Cliff Eidelman where Cliff is in front of the movie poster seeing the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Cliff lets us use that when we do library talks. And that's just a private photo of his. And it's just that's just the coolest thing. Mm-hmm. The composer going to see his movie, in
the day.
At the time. Yeah, that's a great picture. But with James Horner, I mean, he was at the recording of the motion picture score.
Yes, he sat in and took notes.
Because he was sort of a student of Jerry Goldsmith. And he took notes when he was, and I want to see those. I want.
Yeah.
Because there's things just like that are in these archives that are amazing. Sometimes that people forgot about. So we had, I think we had to remind Nick Meyer that he gave notes on Star Trek 3. He gave script notes.
Oh,
we have
to his friend Harv.
To just as a friend. He read it and gave him the script notes, and just these gems that are in there that are just every one of those films deserves a making of book.
Yes. Yeah. Here's what Dave is asking. What do you got? What else are you working on now, or not, or Trek or not Trek?
Well, we just it's going to be published soon. We have a brand new book coming out on the Star Wars NPR radio dramas and the life of the writer of those, Brian Daley. We have wonderful interviews, brand new interviews with Anthony Daniels, Perry King, who played Han Solo, Anne Sachs, who played Princess Leia, John Madden, who won an Academy Award for directing Shakespeare in Love, was the director of the NPR Star Wars radio dramas back in the early 80s and in the 90s. And we were able to interview him, Tom Vagley, really everyone who worked on there. Josh Farden, who played Luke when Mark Hamill played Luke in the first two. And really to look into Brian Daley's, we got his family's permission to look into his archives. We were able to interview his family. So the book kind of tells the biography of Brian Daley, who wrote the early Han Solo books, if people remember those, and did a lot of the early work in Star Wars Expanded Universe, but also wrote those Star Wars radio dramas, which we think are as good as the film. In fact, in some ways better, because they're audio dramas and I get to direct the action in my mind. They were so good. They saved NPR. According to Frank Mankiewicz.
Wow.
Frank Mankiewicz, who was Robert Kennedy's PR person, he was the one who announced to the world that Kennedy had been assassinated.
They received 55,000 phone calls from the premiere of the radio dramas. They were only equipped to answer 12,000.
It's such an amazing piece of Star Wars history.
Part of their fundraiser week. whatever
Well,
NPR.
it was part of there.
It
Yeah.
did boost. It boosted their perception. It boosted donations. It really did save NPR.
So that's not a picture book, but that's just text. That's about 82,000. So it's about 3 times the number of words in this book. But it flowed out of, I swear, it was the most amazing writing experience. I think Brian was on our shoulder. We're very proud of that book. And it's going to be coming out hopefully next year. We have a publisher and it's going through the final go-throughs right now. So very excited about that. And we're doing, we continue to do free library talks. So if anybody wants to hit us up on Facebook, we usually let people know about those. We do them virtually. So really anybody can join us.
And they're free. Through
the world. And we do them on lots of things. Lone Ranger, Star Trek, Star Wars, just any pop culture.
Well, I know they can see you on the Toys That Made Us.
Yeah, we're on Toys That Made Us. We're in Icons on Earth, which is a show about Star Wars, and also on Center Seat, as is Larry on Center Seat. We just, wherever Larry goes, we just follow along behind Larry.
Well, thank goodness, because there is so much out there to do. I really, as I got into this, I so appreciate when I saw you getting into the up and down the major design and department heads and all those people. And a lot of them, again, because they weren't series, the original series, the Berman era people, the ones now are just getting there. The series people get a lot of attention, but a lot of the people that did individual bits with the movies that had a little bit more money anyway, and had, bang, but they worked from movie to movie and not always were there for more than one, or came over and worked on the series later on, like Herman did, say, or whoever. But Herman Zimmerman. But thank you for getting into all that and getting back, because we are much part of this from the time Alan did his book, aside from the deadlines, aside from the politics of don't show them everything, or just, oh, we can't, Nick really wrote this script, but he didn't get the credit, so we can't say that. So we have all of that. Just the idea of the savviness of no one cares about the stunt coordinator and the camera operator, much less the DP. And we are a much more savvy or media consumptive, for better or for worse. We're so much more about that, and people are hungry for that. Much less a movie that's been out for 40 years and still has so much to talk about the making of it, and much less the people.
In fact, the very first mention, which I can't believe it got through at that time, was in Dan's Star Trek II, the official, when Dan was doing. It was the communicator before the communicator, and before the, it was when it was the Star Trek II fan club, and he was doing those newsletters.
Right, he had to be licensed per movie. Right.
And it was in one of these sort of paper, nice but paper,
the softbound
magazines. Yeah, softbound. Yeah. It was William Dornish slipped in the interview that he did. William Dornish was the editor on Star Trek II. And he says something like, and Nick Meyer, and by the way, Nick Meyer really wrote that script. And I was shocked that got into anything in 1983.
Looking at it with modern eyes.
I was shocked that got in there, because I would thought somebody would have caught that and said, because I know Alan was under a lot of, it was a PR, there was a sort of a PR element to that book. And there were things that, as you said, couldn't be said.
Well, the book was going to get a lot more eyeballs, and even though it was baby licensing days, I'll say, right? It had just been a thing since Star Wars blew up, because the early 70s licensing for Star Trek was all over the map, right? Yeah. But I'm sure that the book got a lot more, because it was a book, got a lot more scrutiny than this little magazine-y, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
People, some intern may have been assigned to read the text for it or something, or somebody scanned it. It was 11 at night and they weren't. Let me see. I'm just looking down the scanner here.
Rose asked the question about where she can get it. Yeah, it's available everywhere. It's available at Amazon UK, Rose. It's available at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, regular, brick and mortar bookstores. It's really all over the place. Amazon, it's just, because it's which is kind of strange, when they're bestsellers, they lower the price. So it's interesting. So you can get it now for only $39-ish on Amazon, but we're very grateful. It's been the #1 movie reference book for the last month.
I don't know how I can convey this oh my gosh, Catherine Coulson
Mhm.
was on
Coulson.
camera crew because she's measuring.
Yes.
Kathy Coulson, we were so happy. We also
read something about her recently. She kept working. She did. Oh, she was the log lady.
Yes.
She was
on
the
Twin
log
Peaks.
lady.
Yes.
She was
Yes.
the log lady in Twin Peaks. She worked a lot with David behind the scenes on his movies. And there's a beautiful documentary that's either out or coming out about Catherine.
Mhm.
Very, one of the great things about Star Trek films.
Look at these photos. I'm just saying things we've not seen before. This is all the Genesis.
She is so great. We were able to get facilitate getting some of the photos for the documentary from Wrath of Khan. Her role as what's called first camera. So she's the first assistant. She was first assistant camera.
Mm-hmm.
So it was basically Gain Rescher, Craig Denault, who was the camera operator, first camera operator, and then it was her, and they were the main, the heart of the camera crew, and that was the first time a woman ever had that role in Hollywood.
I was going to say she had to be a pioneer in '82.
Yeah.
In
Star Trek 6. Gosh, the name is escaping me. Kristen.
Oh, I know.
Glover, I think her name is.
Yes.
Kristen Glover. She was the camera. So she was one, there's the cinematographer, then there's the camera. So the camera is the one that's the person who actually moves the camera, like actually hands-on
is running it. Yeah.
She was the first woman to ever have that role. Also, that was on Star Trek 6. So a lot of pioneering behind the scenes on Star Trek as well.
Exactly. I'm just scanning here for last minute questions, but otherwise I need to I'm trying to find anywhere fine books are sold. It's been out a month.
Yes,
actually,
right. It was September 5th, right around Star Trek Day.
Right. If you couldn't make the 40th anniversary, at least get it to Star Trek Day.
Yeah.
I think we've got chatter here. Yeah, I think that's it, guys. It's been fun to catch up with you all before and during. But and a lot of times, because it's happened to me, and then I talk to other people. I know my friend Aaron, what all they wanted to get into the animated series official book that either had to go purely for space, or that's a scope thing, or just, we need 17 legal sign-offs on this, and whatever. It's so frustrating. And the things, I can video a slide presentation at a con and talk about all the things that you can't put in a book because it's on paper and I don't know. But you guys accomplished so much with this. I'm just singing the praises. So even a month late, but it's never too late. So everybody get out and so the other one coming out was the Star Wars. Is there a title for that?
Well, right now the title is The Winds That Shook the Stars: The Making of the Star Wars Radio Dramas and the Life and Legacy of the writer Brian Daley. It's kind of a long title, so but there's a lot in there. It's really actually a beautiful, sad, beautiful story about cancer, about staying alive to finish a project. There's a lot of heart in that book. A lot of because the whole thing was an act of philanthropy. Lucas gave away the rights to Star Wars to NPR for $1.
And the sound effects. The marketing budget.
The marketing, the sound effects, and then the music rights were given away for it. I mean, it was...
So wait a minute. If this saved NPR, then do we, by extension, say that George Lucas saved NPR?
Mm-hmm.
I think that, that, and that's from Frank Mankiewicz himself. Frank was the president of NPR. They had, like anything, and it's publicly funded, right? So they had to convince people that their tax dollars should go to it. They had to convince politicians that they needed to vote to give them the money. NPR was still relatively new. It was only about 10 years old at that time.
And this was what year?
It was 81 was the first radio drama.
Okay.
A few years after the movie. Then 82 and 83, they started doing the Empire. 82, they did Empire. And then it was
Jedi. It was 96.
Jedi was a 13-year gap because they didn't have funding.
Mm-hmm. They got the funding from Highbridge Audio
because that was the era of the return of audiobooks had started. So they figured they can make their money. They can make some money selling it as an audiobook. And they had good sales converting the radio dramas to audiobooks for people. Just so great. I mean, it's such a great. Ed Asner is Jabba the Hutt. John Lithgow is Yoda. Billy D. Williams is Lando. At least,
and they had a ball. You know, they had a ball. All of them.
Oh my gosh, it was so. Nia Vardalos is in there. EV-99, who's one of the torture sort of robot in Return of the Jedi, is played by Yeardley Smith. I mean, there's
from The Simpsons.
From The Simpsons. I mean, there's just so many great. David Alan Grier is in it as a stormtrooper because he was a student of John Madden. I mean, it's just incredible. Just a really great story. It's inspired us to think about a book. We'd love to do a book about the Star Trek version of that because that's never really been charted before, which is all the audio adventures, the Alan Dean Foster written 1970s kids, audio adventure books and things like that. And because there has been some really great Star Trek, and then there's been some great performances within. Like we'd love to interview Zachary Quinto, his Star Trek 2009, his reading of Star Trek 2009. He plays all the characters, and he does such a good job. I love hearing his Kirk. Hearing Zachary Quinto's Kirk is just great. So
that's amazing. There's so much I can't say grace over, and those kind of things I can't. So good on you for knowing about it and then wanting to dive in and document it because we need to do that. I should let you all go. This has just been such a hoot. But thank you guys for coming on. It's sorry it took us a month to get around to it, but I'm glad that we got hooked up for the copies. Everybody, they're going to be there, and I hope it's gone down well for you with Titan. And who's publishing the Star Wars radio?
That's going to be McFarland Press.
Okay.
So it's a different publisher, but it's they're more of an academic press because there's a bit of an academic bent to it, but it's a popular book. It's not written, but it's very researched. Several hundred resources were used for that book,
and notes and things,
and
Brian Daly's papers at the University of Maryland.
Yeah, just a lot of research on that. But we're keeping our fingers crossed that the gods hear us, and because we would love to do the same type of book for some of the other Star Trek films.
From your lips to the great bird's ears, as I always say. Thank you guys. It's so good to see you and see you live and not hassle at the convention and all of that. It's good to see you. Good on this book. I hope we keep spreading. I hope it's gone well so far. I know you had the first wave of publicity came and went, so. We'll have this on YouTube and hopefully get some more out the door too. So
it's very nice because so many people love the movie. It's and even when you get a criticism here or there, we know where it comes from, right? Because this film is such a special film to so many people. It's special to me. It's one of my best favorite memories of my dad, and so. Taking Nicky to see it when he was little, to take him to when they would re-put it in the theaters so he could see it in the theater. So thanks for everyone for listening to us today. Thanks, Larry, for having us.
And thank you for the nice comments as well in the chat.
Oh, there's tons of that. And it'll be on, it'll be posted. So it'll be ongoing. So anyway, thank you guys so much. I'm glad we finally worked it out. And thanks a lot.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks
everyone.
I'll do that. I have to.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Okay.
LL&P. Okay. Bye, guys. All right. Well, we've done a good job here. I think everybody's chatted and questioned out. So as we do with guest weeks, let's just pretty much close it out there, shall we? Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Tenuto's for coming by. Thanks to Titan for getting me a review copy so I could be intelligent about this when we talked. It really is amazing. I really was. Sometimes it's not even about, I think I talked about this with them. It's not even about what you want to do as the author. It's what you wound up sometimes are allowed to do with all those restraints. Sometimes it's legal, sometimes it's space, and sometimes it's just time. And they're all frustrating. And then when you get a criticism or critique back, well, you didn't get into this, and you want to go, oh, I wanted to. Sometimes it's that simple. Yes, indeed. So anyway, thank you guys for coming. Thanks for the questions we had in. No super chat questions today, but that's fine. I just want to make sure and remind everybody though, before we go today, I'm not going to look at the parrots or whatever. They're going to be fine. What I do want to thank and do need to a shout out to is all of our Patreons. So thank you everybody in the TTL club. That's Diana Hopkins, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, and Marie Siegel. Yes, Justin Porteous, Glinda Bruton, Chris Juggler. Why can I not talk today? Chris Jiggins. You're going to go for my juggler if I don't do this. Pranakasha Productions, Comedy Forecast, Andrew Jazimski. I'm just giddy today, guys. That was such an awesome time with the Tenutos. And our live wires, of course, that's Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Hubbard Gunn Johnson, Alan Hoenzi, Dave Gregory, Tobias Rex, Donna S. Runyon, and Casey Shafsky. Remember, I have a very simple, and thank you so much for being part of it. $5, $10, patreon.com/Trekland Live. We keep it simple. Thanks for doing that. It is the fresh month, fairly fresh in the month here. So there's plenty of time to get in before the week is over. Just as a reminder, if you went looking today, no, we're still on hiatus for the Trek Files, but there's 10 seasons there. There's 240 episodes. Some of the folks we were talking about today are past guests. So you can check that out. Future Trek Files, we will try to do some corners of these very topics that Tenuto's got into their book with a big format. We'll see what we can do, digging out some actual documents to share with you. But they're there, the Trek Files, hashtag Trek Files, but podcast.roddenberry.com. Facebook, the Trek Files, is where all of our documents are as you watch and learn. Of course, everywhere else across the web, it's Larry Nemechek at X, Twitter, whatever it is this week. Yeah, all the other ones, it's Larry's Trekland at YouTube. Please like and subscribe while you're here. Please share it around. It's also the home of Second Opinion, where we review the new episodes. Also, Cadet Alice and Dr. Trek Talk Prodigy. Don't forget that. And our live events, too. Trekland on Facebook and Instagram is increasingly fun to be. And, of course, portal47.net, your backstage pass to more Insider Trek. Hey, con blues, post-con blues are not a thing when you are deep diving every month of the year. It is your mini-con all year long. So thanks for that. Thanks for visiting the TeePublic shop, too. This weekend coming up, I think, is another sale coming, so watch for that. Glad to be with you here for another Tuesday. Stay with us. Check in next Tuesday at the same time, and we will be back with another topic, maybe even a guest next week. And more news coming from Portal 47 in the next few weeks. That's coming, too. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. Please stay healthy, do all the things. It's still weird out there. Please stay woke, check the sources. It's going to be thick and fast for a while now with international events going the way they are. Pay attention to where your information is coming from and who's telling you. And most of all, as always, trek well, everybody.